What?
Yay!
Yay! Gosh, we were having some technical difficulty, guys, which is why we're late. You could you could see Carrie's beautiful face, but you couldn't hear nothing she was saying.
I was, I'm laughing at myself. I have to laugh at myself because one of the things that this avatar as Carrie has a very, really rough time with is patience. So I'm getting all worked out and I'm wanting to do like F bombs. Well, I did a couple. So for those of you who are offended by that, I'm glad that you didn't hear it. And then I was telling things on the phone with Brandon, and my phone would only use duck. Anyway, oh, I have to laugh at myself because if I don't laugh at myself, then I'm going to cry. And I was already crying before we started because of being in the chat room with the video premiere. So I'm glad that I'm in the humor stage right now. Oh.
It did. She was getting aggravated. I'm like, don't let it grab your breath, sis. All I could think of was Dale Allen Hoffman, and he's like, anything that grabs your breath. And I was like, don't let it grab your breath, sis.
Oh my gosh. That was hilarious. So no, I took a couple deep breaths before we came on when the countdown was going on. So my breath is back to normal. So I didn't choke it out. I'm laughing at myself because the whole thing. So anyway, I'm glad to be here today. I'm really glad to be discussing this topic with you. This is very near and dear to my heart. It's very real. It's very raw. And I'm just so grateful to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on as well. And this is for me, it's my journey of awakening, and I might get into that at some point on a show here on the Feel to Heal series, but it's been painful. It's been painful, and I've heard many different things of you got to cast this out and don't look at it here, but what I've noticed for me and a lot of others that truly have dived into the darkness is it's important to feel these things, man. It's not it's not cool to just shove them back underneath the rug or shove them down or not acknowledge them or act like they don't exist. They're our creations.
That's right. And that's why we can't cast them out. When the scripture in the English version again, so, because a lot of people I don't have the scriptures up in the Aramaic for us to look at this point, but the English scriptures, when it talks about casting out a demon, and hey, Joe, we got somebody in Australia and we've got somebody from the UK, my friend Claire. By the way, I love all of you guys that are here. I'm so happy that you're joining us. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
We love you very much. So, what was I saying? Oh my gosh, I am such a goofhead. Oh, that's freaking hilarious.
It's good.
I'm
it's
losing
good.
my
We're
hair.
feeling laughter.
Oh my gosh.
We're feeling laughter today.
Oh, it is so good. It is so good for my ego to be humbled. I am telling you what, I love catching it. I absolutely love catching it. I'm like, you are so ridiculous. Okay, we were talking about demons. So when you cast out a demon, it's really your lower self. It's a mirror. You think it's something else other than you. It's an egregor that you made. And then it's basically saying, if you don't fill your vessel back up, then it's going to come back 7 times worse. Well, that's because you're casting away yourself and it's trying to come back home because it's part of you. You can't get rid of it. Oh my gosh. So anyway, I am in a massive laughter mood right now just because I find it's just so dang funny. All of this whole thing to me is funny now. I'm like, wow. Yeah. It's not funny when you go through it. It's amusing when you look on the other side and go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Yes, that was the problem. You were thinking, you weren't feeling.
Mm-hmm. And that actually would be a great, and I know you've dissected the swine and everything, but that would be a great passage for us to go over with the Transmuting Fear into Love series, because that verse right there did instill fear in me. Is like, whoa, wait a minute. So like I can have demons cast out of me, but yet they're all about me all the time. And then they're going to go get even bigger, more badass demons to come if I don't. Well, what do I, if my temple swept clean? Well, then what do I need to put in my temple? Like, I'm just like, oh my gosh, dude, that
I
created
know.
so much in me, at least.
I know. I'm just going to
So,
suggest, because it's funnier than heck, if you want to do an overlay of what they're talking about on the chat. It's so funny. I would love for you if you can. I can't control it on my end. If you can do an overlay, because Tina M said, "Duck, duck, joy."
oh yeah.
Yes, and I do think that we should cover that. I think that that would be a really good verse for us to look at, because of the fear that it does instill, and what the demonic side of things are. You know, I don't know where you want to go. If you want to hear some, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the things that happen to me. Because
Mm-hmm.
when I look at the things that happen to me, it's just information now. It doesn't pull on strings. And any crying that you may see from me today, as I'm sharing with Brandon, if my heart is stirred, it's from tears of joy. It's not from tears of sorrow. It's not from anything other than that, but rather of the expression of my heart and absolute utter joy and bliss for this beautiful journey that I chose to walk upon. I chose to be courageous and venture into the dark. And I will tell you, it was scary as hell. It was scary as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I can already feel the waterworks are coming. So I that's why the video that I shared in the premiere, I wanted to do it before this discussion, because
Mm-hmm.
it started pouring out of my heart yesterday morning, and I couldn't stop it. It was like my fingers were just typing away as this wellspring was coming forth, because of the healing waters that were now a part of my life. And I don't mind sharing some examples. I would love for you to also direct, Brandon, of maybe questions that you might be thinking of, something that comes up that you feel is pertinent to share, because I can speak of specific things of the feeling aspect of it and how that had to happen. But I'm going to just lay it out here. So if there's anybody that hasn't met me before, if this is the first time, I don't see that in our chat room, because pretty much everybody I'm seeing, I know who you are. I've had conversations with you in one fashion or form. But for those that don't know me, who might be watching this later, I had a pretty messy childhood. I suffered a lot of abuse, a lot of psychological, mental abuse, as well as physical abuse. And in the process of my trauma, I developed multiple personalities that I was completely unaware of until 3.5 years ago. And it was normal to me. I also was dealing with complex post traumatic stress disorder. So I just want to lay that out as a foundational piece, so that the complexity of the healing, that you guys know what I was juggling and what I was having to deal with, even though you may not know it on a personal level, it gives you a frame of reference for what we're talking about today. Um,
Yes.
so really, my entire life up until 3.5, 4 years ago, I wore multiple masks, and I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that I had 6 different egos that were running simultaneously within this vessel. They were all portions of me. They are me. And I think that dissociative identity disorder is very misunderstood. Um, in fact, it makes it difficult to even try to describe to you what it is, from a standpoint of having 6 different entities living through the same vessel, knowing that they were all
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
The only
Wow.
thing that makes sense of that is fractured pieces from previous lifetimes that are together quantumly in the now. if you can connect with that.
Mm,
I discovered
absolutely.
through my healing process in where I had to journey to go to begin to integrate, I discovered that a lot of this fractured that I was walking around in was from severe trauma from previous lives that had been lived that had not been reconciled yet. And because of where we are in the timeline, it's like everything had to surface manifest now so I could deal with my shite now. It was like
Right.
this can't keep going. So it had to be dealt with. And I learned to mask my masks pretty well. So much so that it's like you and I were talking about, and I'm going to be releasing a video. I mean, I'm so far behind on releasing videos. It just like, well, my ego self is like, oh my God, Carrie, what the heck are you doing? Get your shite together. You got to get this stuff out. But our conversation that you and I had recorded with Ken, and we were talking about the mind manipulating itself. I'm telling you what, dissociative identity disorder, you want to talk about manipulation? Try dealing with 6 different entities who are yourself that are trying to control and manipulate you in every situation, in every relationship, with every person that you've ever had and everything that you've ever done.
Mm. Wow.
And then
Yeah.
that transition between these different egoic natures that are really all screaming for attention because they need to be healed. And they really are coming from an aspect of brokenness from the early childhood years, all screaming for attention and swinging the pendulum in between. And so, me as the vessel right now is integrated, going back into my memory banks of, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and accessing some things that would happen that just didn't make sense to me. Like, what the hell is that? Like, why did this happen? Right? Why did I explosively react this way? What is that? Because here's the deal. The heart is always in that posture of love. That's all the heart is. The heart knows love. It is love. It is love. So when something would act out of character from that position within, there was something in my mind that was telling me something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it because I was approaching it from here and not here. So if I were to say
Mm.
anything, in order to heal the fractured of the mind, you must go to the heart and begin to feel your way through those fractures. Because, and I'm still down with a cough from me being sick, so I apologize. I'm probably going to have to suck on a lozenge, which is just going to be so, so beautiful. This is another one of those ego things, right? Ugh. Catching my human,
Yeah. Just do what you
which is a
got to
good,
do. It's all good.
I know, right? So, in dealing with these egoic presences in my mind, my family didn't even know this. I had to learn to manipulate my life to be undetected, right? Because I had
Mm.
to I had to
Yeah.
I had to convince myself that my shite was all together
Mm-hmm.
until confrontation would come up. This is when I began to notice that there was something wrong. Because whenever I was confronted, so in other words, knee-jerk reaction me, I've been talking about it a lot lately. If I met you, Brandon, and it was our first encounter, my knee-jerk reaction would be humor. I would want to make you laugh some way. So I'd act goofy or I'd do something stupid, whatever, to make you laugh at me or with me to disarm you. Hey, she's funny. She means no
Mm.
harm. Because my alternate egos that were living simultaneously with me were always on ready alert. I mean, the red alert button was always going with those fractured selves. Always. They never slept. Ever. You talk about exhaustion, and I wondered why I was tired all the time. It's like, oh my God, I got like 5 different personalities, including this one. And those 5 other ones are like Spidey alert system, and they're searching and looking around for anything that's going to come and get me so that they can show up because they want to take center stage. Oh my God. So here, get this. I haven't really talked a lot publicly about this. And so thank you for the platform. I'm actually doing this so I can hear myself, so my ego can continue to comprehend the death of
Hmm.
itself, right? So thank you. And thank you guys for listening. And if it helps any of you, oh, that is wonderful. If it's entertaining, so be
Yeah.
it. If it bores you to death, that's fine too. But I'm doing it for my continuance of my healing so I can hear me. So when I was growing up, I did theater. This is what's so absurd, and this is why I can laugh at myself. So I've got 6 different egos running at the same time, and the only break I had from my own anxiety is when I would get in a play and take on another character. Oh my gosh. It makes sense to me now. I mean, it's like, of course you would, because the other were such in turmoil all the time that the only escape I had from being in red alert was literally to take on a completely different identity, because that is where I found my solitude and my comfort. Does that make sense? It's like,
Yes.
that's why the fractures happen, right? So the one that
Hmm.
was, I would call not me, and in the writings that I put forward, I called it justification. But before I actually gave it the name of justification, it was called not me. And not me would
Hmm.
always present itself first in confrontation, and not me could not be dealt with. Not me couldn't handle any confrontation. And it was like the warrior side of me that came out with my dukes up. It brought out the knives, it brought out the bazookas, it brought out the nunchucks, it brought out anything and everything it could to come against you to protect that fractured little girl that
Hmm.
was on the inside of me. She was a warrior, um, of a crazy degree, like not making any sense at all. So if we were in argument with one another and she showed up to the party, that's what I call it now, party of 6. If you there we go, knee jerk reaction, because I'm uncomfortable talking about this in a degree, so I just used humor, caught my human. So when she would show up, if you said that the sky was blue, she would automatically say, no, it's not, it's green. Anything and everything that could come across as being logical, she would turn into something illogical just to fight.
Hmm.
So, I started
Hmm.
getting a clue in on that. And then when I realized that the person that I was talking to wouldn't back down, then came in what I would call the 12-year-old girl. And these are very specific times that fractures would happen, by the way. Like, I was able to trace some of those things. The 12-year-old hormonal teenager would show up, and it was like this pleading. It was still in cahoots with justification, but now it was on the other swing. So the other mask would come up. And she was whiny and she was hormonal and everything was so dramatic, and you just don't understand. And the faucet works would come out, and it was just drama on steroids.
Hmm.
And then
And it's
depending,
so
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I found it a lot of people that went into theater, they do so well because, like you said, they may be unaware of it or maybe aware of it, but they were already playing roles in normal day life. So they're so good at it, um, until they start realizing that. And like the greatest example I right now off the top would be like Jim Carrey. He started
Mhm.
realizing, oh man, and then you don't see much from him anymore. So that's all I wanted to add is I've met a lot of people that were in theater and they did so well because they're already used to playing different roles and characters anyway.
Well, it's a place of comfort. It's a place of escapism. We can use escapism in lots of different forms. And for me, it was theater, because there was no, I didn't have like the support network that I needed when I was in those impressionable ages. And because I was trying to figure out what was going on with me, and there was not the, my parents did as best they could, right? I love them.
Hmm.
They did as best they could, but there was still not the recognition. It's like, in one family, because I had a divorce family situation, which is part of where the fracturing happened, was when the divorce occurred. But it was two entirely different households. And so they had two different ways of living. So that was one of the easiest ways for me to slide over into a new mask, into a fractured alternate ego, because of the two different households. But they didn't have the ability to know what was going on with me. And in one household, I was like the golden child. I did the drama and, with the theater and the music and all of this. Funny thing is I didn't have an identity. I mean, I'm not going to say my parents' names for, I just don't want to bring them into this, but it would be so-and-so's daughter. Right. So
Right.
I put on this mask as so-and-so's daughter as another element of fractured me. And I ran with that. And I remember, and this makes much sense because my life was a mess. I mean, this is not my first marriage to Ken. I have had 3 husbands before that, and I'm only 48. So you can see how much of a train wreck of how multiple personalities do not work well to sustain a healthy marriage. Just saying. It doesn't work well. And I remember my first husband, I got married way the heck too young. I mean, way too young. Nobody has any business this is opinion. And yeah, this is probably coming from ego here. And I probably shouldn't have a judgment here. So I'm catching my human, but I'm going to say it anyway. It is in my opinion that nobody should be getting married at the age of 19.
No.
What did I know at the age of 19? My brain hadn't even fully developed yet. And I was all over the place. But I remember my first husband looked at me. We went to go meet. This is before we got married. We were engaged, and he hadn't met my other set of the parents. And we went to my other set of parents. Now, this is all the stuff that's coming up in my life as I'm working on my healing process. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember that. We went to go visit my other sets of parents. And so another alternate ego shows up. So I get into my family. I slide into the pattern. So this egoic self, my other alternate identity, shows up. And when we left, he looked at me and I was like, what are you talking about? He looked at me and he goes, who the hell are you? And he was very terse about it. There was no grace there. He literally was trying to figure out what was going on. And I didn't even have a clue back then. Because like I said, I seamlessly slipped in between all of these characters that I played through manipulation of my own mind as a survival mechanism. But that came crashing in 3.5 years ago. And I remembered that. And I was like, oh my God, it's been here my whole life. And I didn't even see it because I didn't even know it existed.
Wow.
I know. So it's no wonder why I had such turbulent life. And I owe much to my husband that I'm married to today. Because
Yeah,
he took this on.
Ken, super awesome. Both you guys after meeting y'all at the gathering in Crestone. But Ken, I was like, me and that dude are pretty daggone similar, man. And I just felt such a connection with your husband in the masculine way, and um,
It's
and
that
but
camaraderie,
yeah,
right? The camaraderie at the heart level.
I mean, I even thought he was former military. He's like, oh,
I
never been,
know.
but just the way the way he carries himself. I was like, this dude had to have been military.
I know. So having said all of that and everything about, because there's not really any reason for me to go into the particulars of what happened, I'd like to talk about the falling apart before the restructuring, because I think this is critical for where we are, especially if some of you are. Thank you guys for your kind comments, by the way. I love you so much. And this is a very raw subject for me to talk about, and in being really transparent with what I've dealt with. And I feel blessed to be able to share it with you. So thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you
So
guys.
You might be asking, and I think Brandon, you know this, and others that may have followed some of the things I've shared. Like, what was the defining moment for me to figure out this brokenness that I had? And I will say that what brought it to the surface, and I'm so grateful for it, is the study of the sacred languages. These beautiful languages of Hebrew and Aramaic are so gentle, and they are so caressing, and they are so lovely. They are the dark mother and the light father. Um, they are Hallel and Lila in word form, in Meltha form, as the word made flesh, that come and assist those who venture in. Now, am I saying that people need to jump into that? No, I am not saying that. Am I saying that you have to go into these in order to be saved? No, I am not saying that. Please, because I've had people that recently have shared that with me, and I'm like, I didn't say that at all. This was the tool that the Ruka, that the Spirit used to bring my healing forth. And it was extremely necessary. So I have been studying for about 10 years, a lot of the Hebrew before I went into the Aramaic. And I would venture into the Aramaic, but the Aramaic was a little spooky to me. And what I mean by that, there's a different frequency. And I totally get it. Why now? Because it was the divine feminine. And what does the divine feminine do? It takes you into your shadow. But yet, there was part of it that was calling me there. And so what did I decide to do? Well, it's the same thing I did when I first got saved. Let's go to the end of the book of Revelation, and see what's going to happen at the end of the world. And then I scared the shite out of myself. And I lived with fear my entire life. And I told myself that I didn't want to have children if it was going to be the coming of the Lord. And because woe to those who are nursing infants, right? So I literally manifested not having physical children in this life because of the fear of the first book I read in the Bible, the book of Revelation. That's what happens when you don't have anybody that's helping, assisting you in your early spiritual walk. Anyway, so I started in the book of Revelation, and I started with the very first verse, and I began working with the divine feminine aspect. And that was off and on. That's like I started about 3 years ago doing that. I've really devoted my time into it the last year. But I started that. And as I started that, it wasn't any time at all that my life began crashing around me. And what ended up happening, I don't want to go too long in the story because I want to get to a point, and we've already been talking for a half hour. It's like, whoa, Carrie. What ended up happening is that, and I see it now, so hear me when I share this. I'm coming from the perspective of where I was as I'm talking to you in my wounded stature from the time when my world fell apart. So the way I see it is differently, but I have to use words to try to communicate what happened so others can comprehend this. In my world, I was surrounded by narcissists. Now, again, what happens is that, you got a mirror reflecting back at you, right? But I had narcissists all around me. And in this time, as I journeyed into the sacred languages and began to touch the divine feminine of the Aramaic portions, very much tied to Yeshua's work, Yeshua's message, something happened. And what was happening to me was that there was a lot of light that was entering in. And as the light was entering in, it was agitating. It was agitating this because there was so much darkness in my heart. There was so much pain. There was so much suffering. And all these alternate egos, trust me, they had built some pretty strong fortitude. The fortresses were massive. Of course, it was one great big one, but they all lived there. It was their castle. It was their own world. And so what happened is the light and the love of the language of the divine feminine began entering in, and it screwed up everything. So here externally, I'm thinking, oh my God, all these narcissists are a bunch. I'm using language, people get over it. I am surrounded by a bunch of assholes and they are trying to kill me. That literally, it started, it was like, but what happened, again, the mirror, right? This started agitating. And because this started agitating, everything external started agitating. So here I'm trying to figure out why the heck these people that are in my life that were narcissists, that were rearing their ugly head simultaneously. I mean, we're not talking about passive aggressive narcissists. We were talking about external, I'm going to make your life hell. multiple of them that were involved with my ministry that I was involved in, my work as a care provider, my best friend that was here. They all flared up because I flared up in here. I don't blame them, as the
Mm-hmm.
catalyst was that the divine feminine energy was coming in to help me with my shadow because it was time. It was time. I was ready for it, even though I wasn't seeking it, right? So they all
Right.
flared up. They all flared up. And in the process of doing that, I lost my shite. I lost it. I started screaming, hollering, throwing things. My mind turned off because it's when I became aware of having CPTSD. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder is different than PTSD because there's no memories attached to it. It is an emotional flood of hormones, all the things that are released in fight or flight. It's called an emotional flashback from years of trauma. And it all came crashing on me at once. And my mind, my vessel, my avatar couldn't handle it. And it broke. I mean, it just busted wide open. And it was the scariest thing I have ever experienced in this incarnated life.
Mm.
Hands down. Hands down. Because nothing made sense. My logic brain turned completely off, and I was in fear on steroids. I was in terror. I could not be consoled. And it's interesting because in part of my feeling to heal, I realized that in that moment, everything that I was feeling when my world came crashing down was, wow, the exact same feeling that I had when I was 3.5 years old and my mom had taken me away from my dad. And she'd taken me to Wyoming. And my dad and I were like thick as thieves, man. I mean, we were like glued together. My world is his world. His world was my world. There was no separation. I was like his little shadow. And my mom didn't have the ability to really pour out love. She just wasn't nurturing. She do a good job? Yeah. She changed my diaper. She made sure I was fed. She clothed me. She took care of me. She took care of my needs, but that heart nurturing was not there, but it was with my dad. He would get down on the floor and play with me. He was my world. And so what I realized in that
Mm.
moment, when my life came crashing down, I was able to trace that back to when my world came crashing down when I was 3.5 years old. And all of that emotional shite that I experienced that I could not express in words because there were no words to be had at 3.5 years old. It was this. It was what was going on in here. It was utter
Mm.
separation. It was utter separation from that which was my world. Now I'm going to connect this because spiritually we've all experienced this. All of us have experienced this because when we came into this incarnation, we got separated from our Father's love. We experienced separation from the place of unconditional love. And so we all have it. We all have this trauma. We all have it, varying degrees
Yeah.
of it. And we don't know how to express it. And that's what ended up happening to me. And there was a good month where my brain turned off. It literally, I thought I was going to have to be put in the loony bin. And I remember my husband one day looked at me, and again, what an amazing, beautiful man I am married to. He looked at me because he was just as confused with the process as I was. And he looked at me and he said, "Is this our new normal?" And I
Mm.
couldn't answer him. I
Wow.
couldn't answer him. And I was terrified because all the masks that I wore, there was not one of them that could save me. You know, not one of my ego selves. And again, this is tears of joy. This is not tears of pain and suffering. This is the recognition of the beauty of the journey of healing by feeling. And I'm feeling my healing right now. So I realized that none of those masks could help me. And I didn't know what to do because, again, that was before I even knew that I had multiple masks and multiple egos. I just knew that everything was failing me. All the things that I could do to try to pull myself up were no longer there. It was like everything was shattered. Everything was shattered. And all it was just raw pain
Mm-hmm.
and emotion that had to be It had to be expressed. And Ken,
Mm.
he held that space open for me in his heart. He didn't turn his heart off when I was in my worst. He just looked at me, and he didn't even have pity. It was, I can't even put the word to it of what it was. Other than if I were to use an English word, I would say grace. Much grace. So, how did this look? How did my healing look like after my world crashed down? It took me a while to figure out what was going on, and I had to do a lot of research. I didn't have health insurance, so there wasn't me going anywhere for help because I didn't want to have doctor bills.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be on medication. I was like, oh, hell no. I did the medication thing when I was younger, and I didn't want to do that. It was just like, I've been there, done that, and it really didn't help. It was just like a numbing thing that I did for a while when I was in my 20s, because the depression was so bad in my life. And of course, it would make sense. Why? Because you have all of this past trauma that needs to be healed, which then manifests in depression. So, the forward thinking of the apocalypse and all this terrible stuff was causing anxiety. And then you have all the depression stuff from unresolved trauma. Again, my hot mess is like, what am I going to do? So I reached out to a woman. Her name is Lauda Leon. And Lauda Leon, she has a YouTube channel called Sovereign Key. And I am so grateful for this woman. I am so grateful for her. Because when I began doing my research, and then I realized that I was dealing with CPTSD, and then when the Ruka revealed to me that I had multiple personalities, of course, you can imagine when you think your life is a certain way, and then all of a sudden it's revealed to you that you're a big fake and a phony, and you have multiple personalities, that's some rough stuff there. And I remember that day and I'll get back to Lauda. I remember that day when the reality hit me about the multiple personalities. And this is why feeling is so important, is that I realized that I couldn't hide it anymore. And so I allowed myself to feel the pain, the shame, the guilt, the confusion. And it was from my gut. I mean, the sobbing, the pain that was coming from these lower chakras, right? All of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I had in the stuck energy centers, which is really what more demons are all about, is stuck energy in your energy centers. That it was coming out, and it was raw, and it was terrible, and it was messy, and it was snotty, and it was ugly, and it was wailing. My cat came to visit me, which I think is funny. He came up and he curled up right on my chest, and he kept rubbing on me and purring, and it was like he was hugging me because I couldn't be consoled. And so animals are amazing when it comes to that. But because I found this
Yes,
out,
they are.
I reached out. I reached out to Lauda because the spirit had led me to some of her videos, and I knew that she was like a parapsychologist that could go into some of these things that most psychologists wouldn't even touch. And she took me on a journey. She asked me, and this is why I hope I'm not boring people. That's just my ego
No.
talking. But she took me on this journey, and I didn't know that it was hypnotism. I didn't know any of that. I was trusting this woman. I was so desperate that I was ready for anything, because everything I researched was, well, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, you're just going to have to learn to deal with it. There's breathing exercises, there's things you can do, but you can't really deliver yourself of it. You're just going to have to figure out how to live with it. And the same thing with dissociative identity disorder, same thing. You're going to have to learn to deal with it. And all these multiple personalities, you're just going to have to deal with it. And you're going to have to allow them space to surface. That is a bunch of bullshit. Yes, I said I cussed. It's a bunch of bullshit. The truth of it is that is just another excuse. That is just another excuse. Because those egos do not want to integrate. They really take on an own life themselves. And really, that is egoic death. Even though it's integration, and you're like, how can you die, right? It's like it's part of me. But it's egoic death. Those masks, it's like a nesting doll. They have to come inside. So what Lauda did is she hypnotized me in a process. She asked me if I wanted to go into the Great White Theater Room. And in my trusting place
Mm.
of brokenness and trusting her, I had no idea what this was. And I was like, sure, because I could feel her heart to heal. I mean, she had so much love pouring out of her. It was crazy. And frankly, I was a little afraid of that because anything that I had gotten close to regarding love meant I could be hurt. But yet there was something that was
Right.
pulling me, right? It was like I'm so desperate that I need some assistance here. So she took me and asked me to go into the Great White Theater Room. I entered into this room and was explaining it to me, and then all of a sudden, in the mind's eye, the imagination is incredibly powerful. And if you think that imagination doesn't create things, then you don't understand the process of creation of heart brain coherence and what is. It's incredibly powerful, especially the visions. So I went into this Great White Theater Room. I'm not going to go into the whole journey, what happened prior to it, because it took me to a very large tree. That is a discussion for another day. But when I entered in to this Great White Theater Room, I began to experience some things. I entered in as a little girl, first clue. I entered in, and when I went into the door, me here, the way I look in this vessel, was like 5 or 6 years old. I was a little girl. I had my
Mm.
white heart, white. I had white hair as a kid. It was not blonde. It was white. I had white hair and big blue eyes. And so I walked in and I instantly had a knowing of that. And there was this big chair in the middle of the room. And in the middle of the room, there was a placard, or on the chair in the room, there was a placard that was flipping names. It was like a bronze plate that had a name, and then it would flip to another name, and then it would flip to another name, and then all of a sudden there were symbols,
Mm.
things that I didn't recognize, and it just kept flipping. Like, I don't know, every 5 seconds it would flip. And I remember looking at that going, well, this is really peculiar. This is really strange. And I remember saying it to her. I said, huh, this is interesting. Now, through the eyes of a 5-year-old, like, oh, this is cool, but I don't know what that is. And so I climb up on the chair and I'm acting like a little kid. I'm like all over it like a kid would be. I'm flopping on it. I'm crawling all over it. And she's got to settle me down. I mean, this was real. If anybody hasn't experienced this stuff before, this is not make believe. I experienced it as if it is in my real time now, like I am talking to you. Can't explain
Mhm.
it any other way. And as I'm in this room and I'm looking at it as she's trying to get my attention, she wants me to sit down and she says, there's a movie projector. Again, so think of even things that Alan Hoffman talks about with movie projectors. And she says there's a screen 360 degrees around you. Everywhere you look, there is a screen. And there are images that are going to be playing. And I want you to tell me what you're seeing. Oh my gosh. Now, my theology had no room for reincarnation.
Mm.
No room whatsoever. I was in a very trusting spot. So that which was I was experiencing, because as a kid I had active imagination. I mean, books were my friends. I loved to read a book because I could imagine it happening, and I lived this incredible world through my imagination. So because I had already tapped into that, this was an easy exercise for her to take me into to start initiating my healing. I'm not going to go into detail. That is a conversation for another day if spirit says I should share these things. But there were things that I experienced from previous lives. And that's when I saw that that's where a lot of my trauma had begun, was in from previous existences, previous lives. And it was rippling through all of my incarnations to arrive into my now point. So then how does healing happen? Well, healing happens is when you begin to feel through that. And I realized something that was very important. I realized it, two things. The first thing was I had to give myself permission to do this, because having the multiple personalities, justification, or the not me did not want me to do this. Not
Mm.
at all. However, when the world came crashing down around it, it, I came to the place where there was no other choice. I mean, when you're sitting in a pile as an ash heap and everything has been burnt down to the ground that you built as a fortified structure for your entire life, and you're sitting on the ash heap, and you wonder what the story of Job was all about. You sit on the ash heap and you look all around at everything that burn up. There is nowhere else to go, literally nowhere else to go. So I had to feel. It was the beginning of my feeling journey, because I tried everything else and it obviously didn't work and obviously was not sustainable. So I had to tap the memories. And there were many times where in living them I had to allow myself to explode. I had to allow myself to say it's not fair, or he was a bully, or just different things, and say it out of my mouth but feel it at the moment, instead of letting it just be this Gordian knot that had no beginning and no end. No end in sight, no way. And I didn't even have a sword to freaking cut it in half so I could begin unraveling it. It was like, oh my God, I don't even know what to do here. Until I realized that every one of those memories had a feeling associated with it. And I had to tap that and give myself permission. If I were to say anything to anyone in their healing journey, trust is a big factor. You have to trust yourself enough to know that it's going to be okay. B, you need to give yourself permission to feel these things. I'm going to bring some religious doctrine in it. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Okay, well, I get that, right? But I'm angry, and I've been angry. Clear, cancel, delete. I'm not angry in the moment. But when I was, it's like fake it until you make it. I had so much anger and rage on the inside of me, and I keep hearing, don't let the sun go down on your anger, or else. It's always the or else portion that'll get a hold of you. And all this whole thing, turn the other cheek. That what I was doing is I was fortifying the masks that I wore, when the inside of me was this Gordian knot that would not let go. And I had to give myself permission to feel. And I had to be okay with what would show up, regardless. Because sometimes we are afraid to look at our own self because we are the ones that judge ourselves the most harshly. Oh, Carrie, you wouldn't act like that. You wouldn't be angry. You wouldn't throw stuff. You wouldn't want to take a knife and try to hack up a pillow. You wouldn't want to bang your fists into the wall until they're a bloody pulp, because that's just not what you do. That is not accepted, and that certainly will not make it in the church.
Right.
Meanwhile, inside is a living hell. So facing all of these things one at a time, I had to deal with it and everything. And so this is where in future, okay, so this was a process that happened for 3.5 years. And then I met Linda Goodmakilis. And I want to give her honor by sharing her name here. Because my friend Laura Leon helped so much, so very much, to give me the ability to begin to untether myself from these narratives, this fear and this guilt and the shame, and begin to excavate and realize that I wasn't dealing with something that was just in this lifetime. It's just, it was all manifesting here and now. This was stuff that was in my genetic coding that had followed me because of the memory banks that is within that coding that had to surface because of where we live. We are in the time of our apocalypse. This is the apocalypse, which is the revealing of you. And so regardless of where you are at and where you think you are and where you think you should be, what is happening to everyone right now is you are being revealed right where you're at in your now. The good, the bad, the ugly, that which you have judged, that which you have created, the egregors that you have made, the shame, the guilt, the pain, the suffering, everything is being revealed right now. And if we do not give ourselves permission to feel our way through it, we are never going to get to the other side of it. And at some point, men's hearts will fail them. Literally, figuratively as well. Because this is meant to shine. This is meant to shine full of light. And when we have the pain and suffering in there, our heart becomes too dense. You know, there's a reason why we have things in mythology about the weighing of the heart against the weight of a feather. That is actually something that is very true in our process. When we heal, when we allow ourselves to do the shadow work, the density of our heart is lightened. And there should be no density in it because light doesn't have weight. It is light as a feather. So you will know when you've made your healing complete, when you can talk about these things and not have a string attached to your heart that is pulling you, either through shame, guilt, pain, suffering. When you can talk about things, when you can say, hey, yeah, I was date raped, and it doesn't do any emotional stuff to you, right? Yeah, I was beat with a leather belt 6 times across my thighs. And then because I refused to turn around, and then I had to have 3 more on my backside. There's no emotional attachment to it. It just becomes a what is statement. Just, it's like a fact. That's all it is. There's nothing attached to it. And that is when you know that your heart is light as a feather now, because there's nothing that can trigger you. You're not being emotionally pulled through the mirror of that which is in front of you, through your people that you surround you, because they are an assistance to you. So when I was looking at all the narcissists around me, they were sent in my life to be a mirror to show me that which was going on the inside. Because the funny thing is, my previous life, as I was an extreme narcissist and I abused and hurt women. And here I'm an incarnation as a woman on the other side of being a victim of that in order to get rid of that karmic emotional stuff. The karma isn't, this is what I've discovered. The karma is not based on the things that you did. Karma is based upon the perception of how you felt about what you did. It's not about the act itself.
Mm. Wow.
It's about the
Mm-hmm.
emotions and the perception that crystallizes that. I get it now because I've had to walk through it to understand what that is all about. So, can you get out of a karma loop in one lifetime? You bet you can, but you got to do your shadow work. And
Mm-hmm.
and 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 we cannot get away from it right now. That's the thing. You can't hide from it. This is the apocalypse. This is the revealing of you.
That's right. Exactly right.
There's literally nothing that you can do with that. You just have to feel through it. So, one last thing I want
Mm-hmm.
to add to this, and then I'm going to let you, because I've been talking a lot. I've been sharing a lot. When I was introduced to Linda Goodmakilis, I think it was Deb Chris sent me a video, and she sent me a video about the 144,000, and I believe it was Alexander Quinn had her on his show. And I had just finished a whole teaching series in looking at the Aramaic form of the 144,000. And I saw it as the quadrated ones. And I knew it had to do with the heart because of the 4 quadrants of the heart. I knew it. And like Ken and I had been discussing this for a long time when we saw that about the heart issue. When I saw the video regarding the 144,000 that she did, there was something instantly that was there. And I was like, my spirit, the Ruka, was like, go there, go there, turn, right turn, Clyde. You need this. You need to go into this direction. And I found the stuff that she would share was so fascinating, like mind expanding on steroids. But there was a lot of things that she would say that would stir me, that would prick me, that would goad me, that would urge me. Shepherd's staff, right? The Lamed. And she would continually do that. And it wasn't like it was I wasn't so offended by it that I had to walk away. I just knew that there was something still there. There was something still there that was being
Mm-hmm.
stirred in me. And because I recognized what the healing journey looked like, if there was something stirring in me, that meant that it was rising its head to say, hey, look at me, look over here. And I had an appointment with her. And it was interesting because the ego does not want to go through this at all. The ego doesn't want to go through this. This is like the most terrifying thing that the ego could ever experience, ever, because it is so exposing. And because love is like the adversarial friend, I know that sounds ridiculous, but to the ego, love is an adversary. because love is one of those things that you can fall in of and out of through the ego. But at the soul level, that once you find love, you will never fall out or fall in because you become as is love. There's a big difference there.
That's
So
right.
when you're living in the ego and you're confronting someone that is love, that is in the embodiment of that, they are adversary to you. You just don't see the friend yet. And so
Hmm.
when we had the first appointment together, because I love Linda, she wouldn't allow me to join her group. And I totally misunderstood why. But of course, again, I love it because when these things happen, right, they're catalysts. She wouldn't let me. I spent my $50. I sent $50 in, and I'm going to join her monthly group. And then I get a return, a refund on my money. And it's like, sorry, I'm not going to let you in my group. I mean, why are you joining? You have your own YouTube channel. What are you doing? And I'm like, oh my God, rejection, right? Adversary, you just rejected
Hmm.
me. And that's what started the initiation process of working with her, because I was able to help communicate with her because I wasn't comprehending, because I still had pain and suffering. So therefore, that what she did, I saw through fractured lenses. I heard it and felt it through a broken heart still. And her first appointment with me, and I'm really grateful that she did this with me. I was still combative, but it wasn't at that point so much that justification had showed up. It was more just the ego side of me. My ego was showing up instead of my heart. And I was very uncomfortable with it. And I was, trying to keep my shite together to make it look like I still wasn't so broken, because I had already done a tremendous amount of work. But, the ego's like, oh, yeah, look at me. I am so good. I just need a little help polishing here,
Right.
please. And she looked at me and she said this with all love in her heart. She says, I'm trying to get you to cry. I'm trying to get you to cry. And I realized that she was using her shepherding staff on me.
Mm.
And she was goading me and she was urging me to give myself permission to cry. And I'll tell you something that's really interesting. When you're healing wounds from when you were 3 years old, I was hearing when you were talking with Alec about that we don't have to go through the layers, and you don't know have to go through the layers, because really the layers of healing, if you start from where you are right now, so let's say when I was 45, and this is actually what I ended up doing, and I don't necessarily recommend it, but it worked for me. It just was a longer process. I was going backwards in time, right? So 45, 44, 43, 42, 41, and I was going through this reverse order. If you can get to the root of the issue, if you can get down to the root, then you don't have to deal with the trunk. You don't have to deal with the branches or the leaves. You just need to
Hmm.
get to the root issue. And that's generally everything that happened to you from the age 7 and under, because in the age from 7 and under, in comprehending now, you are actually in Christ consciousness. And this is when all of your wounds and traumas that set you up in the way that you go, not the way you should go, but the way you do go, is based upon those 7 years. So if you can access and feel to the trauma, not have to try, because here, okay, so let me back up. So ego isn't wanting to feel, ego is wanting to try to figure it out. If you are dealing with your emotional healing process, and I'm not going to say baggage, I used to call it emotional bullshit, and I realized that that was a wrong frame for me to look at it. My emotional beauty of my healing process, of that which has allowed me to shine today.
Mm.
When you are looking at these things and they are surfacing, and especially when you go into the younger years, because they will show up, especially if you ask the ruka, the spirit, to be present with you, the dark mother, as she is walking through the shadow work, they will show up. You will think, oh, I forgot all these things, right? My advice to anyone, because I saw this over and over, is that your ego is going to try to figure out the who, what, why, when, how. Your ego is going to try to dissect the whole thing. And the reason why it does it is it wants to keep you in your head to keep you out of your heart.
Exactly.
because this means death in a measure to the ego. I'm not saying killing it. What I'm saying is the ego wears a mask based upon that which it experienced. And when you take those experiences away, the ego has no longer service. It's like, you just dismantled my whole
Mm-hmm.
world and I don't even know what to do now. And it freaks the crap out of it. And that's why it wants to keep you in your head to figure it out. This is where we talk about letting go of the narratives. It doesn't matter. Like for me, when my dad, when I was talking about him whipping me with the belt, when I first saw that, I had to deal with a lot of that in the forgiveness issue. But what I realized is it didn't really, it had nothing to do with my dad. It had everything to do with what I was feeling in the moment. Had nothing to do with
Mm-hmm.
it. Because if you put a face and you put a name on it and you put a time and a date stamp on it, you're still projecting outwardly. And you are making bad guys when we're really all benevolent beings. And I know this is
Mm-hmm.
hard for some people to comprehend, because somebody could say, well, all these narcissists and you got abused, and what about your attacker and the date rape person and the person that roofied you? I mean, those are bad guys. No, they're not. They're playing a role in the grand drama of things that we all agreed upon for our experiences. Because in our experience, you cannot grow without a catalyst. So there are people in your life that have played the roles as a catalyst, as the bad guy, in order for you to be able to grow and heal and mature and move into this beautiful place of forgiveness, love, unity, harmony, to see each other as self, as one, as healed, as whole. Has to
Mm-hmm.
be. It has to be that way. So all these beautiful people, and I call them beautiful because they truly are, they were brought in to hold the negative pole in duality so that we could experience what the separation felt like between the dual system in order to neutralize it within. Does that mean that you don't feel? No, that doesn't mean you don't feel. And no, that doesn't mean that you don't go help your friend if they lost their house and you feel like there's some injustice. What I'm saying is, you have to have this sense of neutrality come to you by seeing both sides. And so somebody had to play that role. Somebody had to play that role. My dad had to play that role for me. Had to. And I'm grateful that he did, on the other side of my healing now.
Yes. Yes, that's when you can really, really be thankful when you look back, when you go through these. And I'm not saying I'm wherever there is. I'm not saying I'm there. I'm just saying I'm still working. But now I can, on the other side of things, I can look back and see with appreciation that in which I used to allow to destroy my own life. The things that I used as ammunition to destroy my life is now things I look back in appreciation to know they were the building blocks. That was the mortar. That was the cement in between the blocks, man, to help build my infrastructure, my tower, my palace, my mansion, whatever. Uh, so it's beautiful, man. It's beautiful when you can look back on it like that.
It is. And I'm telling you, it's so freeing. And I just saw, I totally get it. Beautiful Renee Gade is saying in some of her things that it's extremely hard in the case of little children being abused in that way, and that my mind is rebelling. I comprehend that. I totally comprehend that. And all I can say is I am thankful. I am totally grateful. I'm amazed and am in awe with the process. And I love those who abused me. I love those who
Hmm.
attacked me. I am one with them, and they are one with me. And
Hmm.
what helped me, and I know this is really hard, because I'm coming from a place on the other side of my healing. I'm not standing in a place where I still have areas that are not healed, where I can look at like the abuse of a little child. Does my heart scream no in that? You better believe it. If you think I'm coming from this place of going, oh, let the little children still be abused. That is not what I am saying. Okay, hear me on that.
Mm-mm.
There are injustices. What I am saying is that coming from the other side of it, I have seen the purpose within myself of what has happened, the catalysts that were used within me today to free me from my karmic looping of emotional energies that were stuck. Now, if I
Mm-hmm.
know that a child is being abused, I do not stand in the position where I go, well, there's just their karma, just let them be abused. That
Right.
is so screwed up. Okay. I am not talking from that position. If I know a child is being abused, I am going to do what I can to help free that child. And I wanted to clarify that because I've had some people think that the position that I'm taking when I stand and I say I'm in the place of neutrality is like kind of a nihilist, just let everything happen because it's a purpose and it's just, oh, so we got children being abused and we got all this going on and got all this going on. And I'm in neutrality. I'm just doing my little shaman shuffle and I just don't give a shite about anything because I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I deeply feel for these things, but I am in a place of neutrality so that I can actually be of greater assistance to those things in my world around me than I was when I was emotionally attached to those strings that would be pulled that would cause me to react instead of respond.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a
This is
completely
really
different place.
good. This is really good, actually, for in my mind and how I've seen it. I agree with you. Would I stand back if I knew a child in my vicinity, someone I knew was being hurt? Would I stand back and continue to allow that to happen? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Um, but it's like I had this spirit speak to me one day because it said that Yeshua, Jesus, he overcame the world, and I'm like, well, what is the world? Well, the world is duality. And duality will do everything it can to pull you back in either to the positive or to the negative side. And it wants you choose positive or negative, and it doesn't want to give you the third option. Well, I can take the straight and narrow. I don't have to choose positive or negative. I can choose the straight and narrow, the road of neutrality, 0 point, Christ consciousness. And Jesus, even being hung on the cross, knew this. He knew this. He had overcome the world. The world was, if I look at it as I am the one and only being, and this whole world was constructed to bring me to my most highest realization of who I am in myself, its job is to give me everything to choose this or that. That's its job. It's doing its job. Everyone is a benevolent being playing a role in a cast and a type and a shadow to do its job to get me to find out who I really am. So I can't judge it because it is me. So Jesus had overcome that, and that's to me how he was able to kind of be like Paul in a way where Paul said, I no longer regard any person after the flesh, but after the spirit that's in that flesh. I see that. Jesus looked past the flesh and said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Why don't they know what they're doing? Because they don't even know who they are.
Well, yeah, they
He
didn't
to
even
me
know
like
who they were. The thing is they also didn't have that realization of how we are of one, that we are one soul,
exactly.
we are one heart. And really what they were doing is they were working out of the brutality and the pain and suffering that was already within their heart and projecting it upon another, enforcing control and manipulation because of the authoritative system that they were in. And it was like a way for them to be able to project it outwardly. I find it interesting that even in Yeshua's own death, when I have gone through the sacred writings and the way they wrote about it, again, a lot of these writings were not written at the time of his walk. Some of these things
Mm-hmm.
were written decades after he was here and had no longer been here. But the way that it was written was that, he was at that place where he was at egoic death on the cross. When it said, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? It didn't say that at all. He was really saying, my strength, why is it forsaken me? And it was a confrontation of his egoic self that he had to lay down in order for him to pick up real life. And that's really where I want to kind of
Mm-hmm.
land the plane on this process of healing. When we are talking about dealing with the ego and we talk about ego death, we're not saying to kill the ego. What we're saying is, oh my gosh, this is, oof. Sorry. The ego willingly lays its life down for Christ.
Mm.
The most painful part, and again, these are tears of joy, guys. This doesn't have to do with brokenness or, oh, I still have areas to heal. It's the fullness of the recognition of what is happening when we talk about ego death. The ego gets to the place where it willingly lays its life down for another, for Christ, for Christ's sake. In other words, so that the anointing can flow through you. There's no greater sacrifice than that. And I say that because the most amazing part, thanks, Lou, the most amazing part of this journey for me was when I literally had to say goodbye to my other egos. And people don't understand unless they've gone through this. I remember in my process of feeling this, I just saw how much gratitude right now. That when I was dealing with not me, justification, I remember, and I know it sounds strange. But I'm just sharing what it was. I remember having a conversation with myself, me, with justification. And I remember that I had to say goodbye to her. And I thanked her for her service. It wasn't like I was trying to kick her out. I literally was embracing this form of me because of all the years that she vigilantly stood and watched over me. Although she created a lot of chaos in my life, I understood the role that she was trying to play for me. And I had to have a discussion with her. And of course, this was an inward dialogue that I spoke outwardly so that I could hear it. I mean, that's part of what Linda has shared. And I literally, before I even met Linda, that was something that I did because it was like, Ruka, the spirit was saying, you need to do this. It was very much, you need to say goodbye. You need to be willing. You need to be willing to let them go. And it was so amazing because here, part of what I was dealing with was the fear of letting go of the things that I had known to be. And they were really like my best friends. Again, that sounds strange, but they were like literally my best friends. I mean, 5 other of myselves, in that if I didn't have anybody else to turn to, I could turn to them, right? Internal dialogue. I know it's just really bizarre. Anybody else that watches this in the future that has DID or has dealt with it will totally comprehend what I'm saying. But I had to say goodbye to him. I had to willingly open up my hands and release them.
Mm-hmm.
But what was amazing was when I did that, and it was a tearful goodbye. It was like, I'm saying goodbye to my friend, to my protector, to, that which was the emotional support of me, that which was the perfectionist side of me, all of these other entities. Is that what happened is my heart expanded, right? It's because I had taken like my heart and fractaled it out, because each part, disassociated identity had a piece of my heart. And so as I let go of them, they actually came home. And in the coming home,
Mm-hmm.
my heart expanded. Because what I didn't realize is I was living off of limited heart capacity. And I welcome them home by releasing them, by willingly releasing them and thanking them for their job that they provided for me. And I had to let go. And yes, Renee, it was me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the most beautiful part of my healing process, is one by one, being able to acknowledge their presence, have gratitude for the service that they did for me. And they willingly laid themselves down for me so that
Mm-hmm.
I could be where I am today, allowing my heart through expanded light love to be able to share the things that I do through the sacred languages, is because they don't get in the way anymore. They are me. I am one with them, and we are one together.
That's right. Yeah, and that's another reason why I wanted to do this series is I want to try to make a push to bring people deeper in the feeling to heal. That's a stepping stone into this. I spent 3 hours on a video call with Linda McGillis last night. I'm not going to get into it, but absolutely amazing, mind blowing, dot connecting, just transformational, awesome. So what I want, the spirit, and I've been doing a very poor job of this. Like Carrie likes to say, all fingers are being pointed back at me right now. But this, I, th- I, th- I think you might remember when the spirit told me this, Carrie. But because I think I did communicate it with you. But the spirit spoke to me. Do you really believe in oneness? And I was like, yeah. And the spirit said, then you need to stop using divisive language. You
Oh
need to
yeah, I do
stop
remember that. Yep.
using language that divides at all, because I'm not gonna get into the intricacies of it and the what ifs and the polarity side of this statement. But we can look at people who molest with children. We can look at the people in the politics now. We can look at people who supposedly drink adrenochrome and Pleiadians and Arcturians and Draconians and I see this so much within the spiritual community, and it really kind of is like nails on the chalkboard for me. And again, okay, so I'm not pointing fingers at anybody other than me because I'm guilty. But the spirit's moving me in a new spot, because how can we say, how dare they do that to that child? How about we look in the mirror and say, how dare you do that to that child? How dare you do that? Because if we believe in oneness and we really believe in what we're saying, and we understand souls on a fractal level, and there's many people that have talked about this, and I'm not going to right now, how souls, there's only one soul. There's only one soul, and it's been fractaled out. So when you judge, and we think, oh, how dare I judge my neighbor? Well, that's anything within my vicinity. Dale Allen Hoffman says that anything that I put my attention to, but that's anything in the past. That's anything that's happened in the past, and we judge that. We deem it something instead of offering it forgiveness, because there's only one soul. It's only one. That's it. And it's been fractaled out. So how dare you do that? So that's when I look at it on that level. So cool. We're in oneness. There's a lot of people waking up to that right now. I've been speaking, you've been speaking, other people have been speaking on it now. And I've really heard the oneness thing only really start coming about for maybe the past year and a half, year and a
Mhm.
half, hardcore hitting mainstream. I'm
Mhm.
sure it's been happening. But there's another level. So this is like a stepping stone for me and wanting to promote this. That's cool. We're one, but are we willing to lay that down for the greater? Are we willing to lay the oneness down
Right.
for wholeness?
Right. And the only way that you
Because
can
we
do
can
that,
be
the only way you can do that is you have to heal yourself and make yourself whole first. So
exactly,
yes,
because we
it
can be
is.
one, and we can know that we're one, but are we whole?
And
That's totally
this
different.
is I would love to. I know we've been going long, but I would like to take 10 minutes. I know we're at hour and 20, but if you're okay with this and people are still, I want to go into some Hebrew and Aramaic words, if I might, because I think this will help us be able to comprehend a little bit more. I was looking up words for like healing, wholeness, restoration, feeling, and I was totally blown away. I do want to share. I see that, first of all, thank you all for the kind words that you've been saying. I've been
Hmm.
watching your comments. I missed a lot. I missed a lot when I was actually talking about when I was getting into my emotional state because I was trying to stay heart centered and I didn't want to get distracted. My ego was wanting to look at what you guys were saying, and my spirit was saying, stay right here, Carrie, stay right here. But what I have seen of you, thank you for your kindness. Thank you for listening and not judging the information, but sharing your support. So thank you so much. It was my honor to share this and be transparent with you because that's all the Spirit's been really talking to me about for the last several months is transparency, hence Crestone. Transparency, be transparent. The question was about trying to figure out this concept, this oneness, what we're talking about, and really comprehending it. And I just want to say this, a lot of this has to be experienced. There is in no way that we can really articulate it well. It only can be experienced because once you experience it, then you know exactly what it is. It can't be analyzed through the ego. It has to be felt through the heart. And as soon as you begin
Hmm.
engaging that and touching that, then you'll know exactly what we're saying. But to try to verbalize it to you, especially in the idea of the abuse of children, and we're saying that everybody is benevolent and all this kind of stuff, the mind, the ego can't handle that information. So the only thing I would say is please, I love you, Claire. um, the only thing I would say is that don't try to analyze it through your mind. Go within your heart and seek within. All the answers are here, truly. And continue to seek answers. Before you go to bed, ask questions before you sleep, because a lot of times the answers that we get will be when we're resting because the ego is at rest. It's when our heart is open and our spirit is open, that soul level of us, that we can receive the greatest amount of information while the egoic mind is totally tuned out for the night. So that is what I need to share with you guys because I know that some of this is really hard concepts, and it was hard for me to start talking about these things on my own channel. Of In fact, there's been some ostracizing in my own family because I decided to open my mouth and share that I've lived previous lives, and there was no room in their theology for that. So I've kind of been cut off from
Hmm.
half of my family because of that, and that's okay. I will say this, and then I want to go into a couple words here. I will say this: at some point everyone is going to remember, and it is that point in the place of the remembering that we need to be a strength for one another. Because some of you, thank you, Lou, some of you that haven't gotten there yet, that are going to need a support system. Because when you begin
Hmm.
remembering things, the good, the bad, the ugly, and different, it is going to really mess with you. And it's going to be a very incredible journey because I had to come to terms with some of my dark sides that I have done through human sacrifices, etc., that I had to come to terms with and then begin to see how all the pieces fit together in the whole in this inverted matrix. And I'm so grateful for it. So it can only be experienced, you guys. I don't know what else to say. It can only be
That's
experienced.
right.
Words are going to fail you, are going to fail us in trying to communicate these things to you because some of these things are sensed. It's right
Hmm.
here and there's no words. It's just not possible to translate it out.
And if I can, Carrie, and then I want you to get right
Please do.
into it. I just want for those that maybe that are watching that need the scripture. You know what I'm saying? That, well, how can you verify that? Jesus did this multiple times when he was talking to people. He went as far as words could go, and he would
Mm-hmm.
say, "Let those with ears hear and eyes see." I'm taking you as far as I can with verbal language.
Mm-hmm.
The rest has to be gone within, and you need to experience it.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that. And there are verses in the Hebrew and Aramaic that do go into these things. Do I know where they are right now in
Mhm.
addresses? No. That is one of the things that I've always had difficulty time is remembering the addresses per se. Um, but Brandon and I, when we're talking about these things on our Friday session, if there's verses that you want us to dig into, we're currently doing one right now. Please let us know. I mean, I will do that. I will do that for you. When I move over to Patreon, I would like to be able to shift some of that over to Patreon now, because I am realizing that some of this content is it's deeper, and it's very precious, and it's meant for family. Everyone is invited, but those who have entered into these beautiful waters of family, it's more for that, if that makes sense at all. It's not like I'm wanting to cut anyone off, because that's not my heart, but I really want to be able to share this, because there's a lot of transparency here, obviously, and putting these things out, that we are creating family, and I want to have a place for the family together. I want that. I've been trying to
Hmm.
do that, but I've realized that there needs to be one more step for the family together, to have a place where we're exchanging energetically with one another in a much different format than just on YouTube or just on Facebook. Because there's other energies with people that come in that just aren't in that heart space yet, and I love them, but I'd really love to be able to connect to my soul family in a much deeper way than what we are able to do on the platforms that we're currently on, if that makes any sense. That's my heart.
Hmm.
So, one of the words that I wanted to share with you guys, and I don't want to keep you really long, if you guys aren't interested in the Hebrew and the Aramaic, I would say this would be a really good time for you guys to turn off the live stream. And thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. But those
Hmm.
of you who are interested in the language, stick around for a few minutes longer. I appreciate all your time in being here and sharing the space with Brandon and I, as this has truly been an honor for me to come here today and share with my one of my best friends and be able to talk
Oh.
about my journey. Well, you are. I mean, it's more than that. I say best friend. I have lots of best friends because they're family now. And there's a difference. You're a marvelous comrade. I don't have
Mm.
words. I don't have words. You are one with me. And I've been lately saying to
Yeah.
some people, I love you as my own soul. And now I understand the relationship that David had with Jonathan. I love you as my own soul. Truly, Brandon, truly. And many of you that are already on here, I could go on and on and on, but feel my heart. I love all of you as my own soul. So one of the words that I wanted to talk about is this word that it's marafa, and I love this. It's a word that means a cure, deliverance, and medicine. I have this beautiful friend, family that's in Crestone, and her name is Yvette. I'm not going to say anything more than that, and I'm not going to give her necessarily her avatar, just because some of that anonymity. But she is a shaman, and she talks about good medicine, and good medicine is part of the Hopi and the Red Road walk as well. We always talk about good medicine. Well, this is tied into this word. Now, what is so beautiful about this word, and let me share this concept with you. The main root of Rafa is deeply associated with fruit. It's the same word for fruit. The letters are in a different order, but it's the same word for fruit. And the letters as they move forms the word that means healing. So in order for us to have fruit in our life, we must go through the healing process, because that's the only way that the fruit then is made ripe in order to be something that can be brought to others as sustenance, as healing. The healing process has to be part of fruit, and fruit has to be part of healing. They go hand in hand. You can't avoid that. So the fruit of the spirit of the ruka only comes through healing.
Hmm.
And it's in the language, and you see it. You can't get around it. This form of the word, though, this marafa, the first two letters is the word mar. And the word mar means bitterness. So in other words, what this is saying is that the healing process is turning our bitterness into that which has healed us.
Wow.
So, looking a little deeper, when we enter into the waters of chaos, I'm going to just talk about the letters here, just what they're saying. When we enter into the waters of chaos, which is in our incarnation and our forgetting, we enter into a very poor and destitute state because we forgot who we are. We don't remember who we are. But through this process, through the bitterness, and again, why I can take a look at some of the things that have brought trauma, through the bitterness, this chaos is actually what is used to raise us up. It's what's
Mhm.
raised us up to become a first fruit. What is a first fruit? What really is a first fruit? Well, when you take a look at the Aramaic scriptures, when it said that, and you can see it in the English translation, it says that Ishu or Yeshua or Jesus was the firstborn from the dead. That was mistranslated. He was the firstborn of the dead. Why? Because his ego laid his life down so that Christ could flow through the vessel.
Wow.
That is the
Yeah.
bitterness that raises you up. The bitterness is the egoic walk, and it must lay itself down in order for the head, the Christ, the anointing to rise. The last two letters are Pe, Aleph. Pe is the mouth that speaks forth. Aleph is the oneness. It is uh, the universal knowing of the one infinite creator in being the mystery of the many who are one. That is what this word is saying to us about a cure, deliverance, and medicine. Cure and health, which is just fascinating to me. The second word I want to share, I have three in total. The second word that I want to share is one, it's orecha. Orecha. And any of you, if you've been listening for a while, if you hear the word or, that should already cue you into something. Or are we good, you guys? I'm hoping it's good. Are you good, Brandon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just writing. I'm listening to you, but
It's
I'm
fine. I
writing,
just
taking
we're at an
notes.
hour and a half, man, and I know about some people they start getting kind of itchy butts because they want to get up and move. But I really want to land the plane on this because this was how my healing happened, you guys. What I'm sharing with you is
Mhm.
I'm giving you the fruit of my healing through the language of light love so that you can understand that there was a map, there was a blueprint, a map, and a way for the healing to manifest. Elaine, I would love for you to start from the beginning and listening to this. I'm glad that you're joining us now, but I would love for you to start from the beginning. So, this word oreka is the feminine form of healing a wound. It's the feminine form of
Mm.
healing a wound. And the first two letters, actually, the first three letters of this word, although the order is a little bit different, is the word for light. How do you spell that? It's Aleph Resh Vav Kaf He. So through the letters, it is through this idea of God, through spirit, of the one infinite creator, the mystery of the many who are one, who have come in, that are really the strong leaders. They entered in their poor and destitute state, but they were risen up to become a first fruit, to become a leader, to become the firstborn of the death of the ego into the leadership, the headship, the Christ anointing, because they connected to her heart. They grasped a hold of the power coming in to yoking and taming themselves to that which was bringing them revelation. And the revelation, because it's added on the suffix side of this word, means they grasped the power that comes from doing their shadow work
Mm.
in this word. That is what it's saying. And part of this word means soundness and wholeness, to become
Mhm.
whole, which is what you were sharing. That's why I wanted to bring this word forward. It's the word for wholeness. We all have to walk through the valley of our own shadow.
Yep.
And you will
The
find it
valley of the
interesting.
shadow of death.
Exactly. So
It's
this
your
now,
valley. It's your
it is your valley, and it is your dealing face to face with your very own ego that needs to lay its life down for the adversarial friend, which is Christ, which is the anointing, which is the one heart, the one soul, the one mind, the one consciousness that is waiting to freely flow through your vessel. And your ego willingly needs to lay its life down. And so it will walk through the valley of
Mhm.
its own death, its own shadow. That should change that whole meaning of that scripture for you. The root of this word, you'll find it
No.
interesting. It's orak, and then I want you to just let me finish this real quick. It's the word orak,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
this is what's so hilarious about this. This word means to belong. So the healing journey of a wound to become sound and whole is kind of a long journey. It's literally in the root of the word. Now go ahead. I just find it humorous.
That's all. I was going to tell for those that need maybe some English narrative scripture for where I was talking earlier, and we're talking about one soul. When you said it again, this is what got me. The Spirit showed me. Remember where it says in John, I think it is, where Jesus, it says Jesus came to his own, but his own did not. They didn't know him, right? And like we always think the Jews, right? Oh well, he just came to Jews, but the Spirit spoke to me a long time ago, and I didn't understand that, and I was like, wait a minute. No, the Spirit's like, that's not what that's talking about. Dig deeper there. That's exactly what it's talking about. It's one soul. He came to his own, the very own fragments of his own soul he came to, but they were so in darkness they could recognize their own soul.
Exactly. Because they were fractured and they were living from their egoic mind. They hadn't entered into their heart. Because as soon as you enter in your heart, you guys, and you heal and you get that shadow out, you cannot help but to see everything through this lens. And you'll never want to leave the space of your heart again. As soon as you leave the space of your heart,
Mm,
you enter into judging. And then all of a sudden, the ego is set on the temple of your brain, claiming itself to be God. That should connect some dots
that's right.
too, because that is Antichrist. That is the anti anointing. The last word that I want to use, and I cannot wait to land the plane on this and let everybody go. It's a word that means to feel. Specifically, it means to feel. And what I wanted to share with you is that this word is only used 9 times in the Old Testament, and numbers are very important. There is a reason why it was only used 9 times. 9 is the number of completion and or judgment.
Mm,
It's the same thing. Because when judgment comes and you're living through your apocalypse, which we are in right now, apocalypse just means the revealing. It's a Greek word, is Giliana in, I like that. Vishta, it means overripe fruit. Yeah, overripe fruit. It's been on the tree a little too long. Um, anyway, the essence of this is to feel, and it comes, so 9 is the number of completion. So judgment is the time of the apocalypse that we're in right now, the revealing of that which has been covered, that which has been hidden, that which is within your holy of holies. We are now entering into our own personal apocalypses, and it's manifesting externally as well. So it's internal, as within, so without, as without, so within. And this word is the process of feeling in order to reveal. And I think this is absolutely beautiful. The spelling of this is mem sheen sheen. Now this should begin to ring a bell, because mem and sheen, mem is water, sheen is fire. When you take a look at some of the energies, there is the form of masculine water, feminine fire that come together in this word. These are the same 2 letters that form the word Shem. So when you hear me say those who are of the name, they are those who have walked through the fire and the water, because this is a 2-step process. You burn everything up, and then you have to wash the ashes away. So if you're sitting on your ash heap, that's really good, because that means that the living waters of life are going to cleanse you and rid you of the ashes, but you're going to have to go and burn your structures down. There's no other way. All those egoic structures that are keeping you from the sacred place of your heart, you're going to have to light a match to. And Mother Father is there to help you assist in it, but it has to burn down. It has to completely burn down in order for the egoic mind to willingly lay its life down, so that you can then pick it back up, right? And then it becomes your best friend.
mm-hmm.
So, at any rate, it's sheen, it's mem sheen sheen. So this word is, you are entering into the waters of chaos, and then you have to go through the twin flames. The twin flames is mother and father. Mother, I had somebody ask a question earlier that I never got to in a different video. They're like, can you please explain mother and father? Mother is that external orientation. Mother is what the outside world is. Mother is like teaching you the golden rule, the form, right? Building your temple. I'm not going to go punch Brandon, because he's probably going to punch me right back in the face, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to treat Brandon kind, so he treats me in kind. It's that simple thing, but it's the form and the structure on the outside. When we get to the fire of mother, we're talking about the inside formation, not the external orientation, not that which is projected outwardly. It's that which is the unseen, that is living inwardly. And when we subject ourselves to the twin flames, this is what I think is so incredible, you guys, and it undoes me when I look at this. These twin flames have the same exact frequency because mother cannot be father, father cannot be mother unless they're one with themselves. So when you overlay, it's mem sheen sheen, but really it's mem sheen that have come together as one. It is the fire and it is the water. And the reason why this is so profound, first of all, the name Yeshua, not as it's presented in the Aramaic form, but the way it was written is Yod He, Shin, Vav He. Yod He Vav He is the tetragrammaton. Yod He Vav He is what you know as Yahweh. Yeshua is the fire that exists in the heart that is between Yod He mother, Vav He father. So when you're dealing with the flames, Yeshua came as a representation. His whole message was not about him. It was about the fire that is within your very own heart so that you can graduate from being a cherubim, one who was separated, that was poor and destitute, that needs to build themselves on the inside, to become a seraphim, to become an angelic messenger of fire. Because you walked through the fire, you became one with the fire, and the fire does not touch you anymore because you're resonating at the frequency of fire. You have burnt up everything that it can use as fuel, and you have become the flame itself. When you reorder this word, and so this word means to feel, you have to experience it externally. You get burnt. Something's not going right. Guess why you got burnt? Because you got chaos in the inside. That's why the mem's first. You got chaos on the inside. So the first flame is going to burn you because that what you got going on here is manifesting outside. So the fire is going to come and burn you. And when that gets your attention, it's going to drive you inward where the second flame comes to deal with this on the inside. When you flip these letters, same gematria, same letters, mem, sheen, sheen, and you flip them in an alternate order where you have both wings as a seraphim, both the mother and the father, it becomes the word Shemesh. Why is Shemesh so important? Shemesh is the word for the sun, S-U-N. So anybody that is connecting to solar logos, that might connect some dots, and I'm not going to go into detail on that. It's for another day. It also is the word that means a servant, a minister, one who is a teacher, one who is a prophet, one who is a priest or priestess. It is also the name of the center candle on the menorah, and it was used to light all the other branches of the menorah. Nura is the word for light in Aramaic. Menura are those who came through the living water that first entered into the chaos, but then became the light of the world. They uncovered the basket that hid their light, and they became the servant candle, then lit all the other energy centers of their vessel and being. The menorah is a representation of your energy body. When you become the servant candle, the Shemesh, you activated your heart. Your heart is now fully illuminated, and it lights up all 6 other branches so that you are the light of the world. And that is the word that what I shared with you before. The only way that can happen is you've got to feel to heal.
Boom. That's good right there. That's a perfect spot to end it.
That's why I wanted to end with that.
Oh,
For those of you who are patient, look, it's 1:44 right now.
oh wow, it is 1:44. Well, look, I thank you so much, Carrie. Thank you all for that joined us in the chat. All of your comments. I love you so
Thank you.
much, and I will see you Friday.
That's right. And we're going to go on and doing more of transmuting fear through love. So please join us. We got some cool stuff that we're going to talk about. I love you,
Yes,
Brandon, so
absolutely.
much. I love you. I love you. I love you as my own soul.
I love you as my own soul.
So beautiful.
All right,
Thank you,
guys.
guys.
Y'all have a good evening.